Hi, everybody. Hi, Matt. Hi, Clint.
Hello, hello.
How's it going?
I'm so excited to be here with you guys today. It's like, if we can all imagine, we are sitting around a table together. We've got our matcha or our coffee or our beer or whatever you want to be drinking at a table, maybe a whiskey. Clint, you and whiskey? Well, I
Maybe.
remember our days sipping on whiskey.
Yep.
We are here to share and talk about some of these big conversations that we've been having already, the three of us, for at least the last 6 months. Matt, Clint, you and I have been having some big conversations for more than 6 years, and we are excited to welcome others into these conversations that we have been having for some time now.
Yeah. I'm glad to be catching up in this way and really giving an opportunity for people to hear. I mean, this isn't scripted. I'm excited to respond to you guys in real time and let them hear how we think about this and where we've come from it. So that I'm glad you've put this opportunity together for us all to chat in this way.
Yeah, same. It's an honor to be here. And I don't know of any other project that is doing the type of business model re-engineering, reorganization, imagining that's happening here. So this is worth sharing.
Yeah, I love that. And thank you for saying that, Matt. So let's just start there. Why are we even talking today? Why are we gathering at the table, right? What have you guys been noticing or sensing in your world? I mean, Matt, you just said you have not seen something like this, and which makes it really exciting. But tell me more about that. What have you not been seeing, or rather, what have you been seeing out there that makes this so exciting?
Okay. So on my side, when I spend a lot of time thinking about the big picture and the way that humanity is interacting with the planet, and there's breakdowns along multiple levels happening. And we can see a lot of the outcomes as they're developing, but it's a deeper question to be like, okay, what is causing this? And I think one of the primary causes in my world is we have a governance issue where humanity hasn't figured out the governance structures to live in harmony and capacity with our planet. And so, you could point to capitalism. There's all sorts of reasons you could point to, but to take a business from a heart-centered, soul-centered foundation and say, how do we operate in a way that actually supports everybody here as the foundation, that's amazing. And that's why I'm here. That's why I want to be a part of this.
Thank you. Clint, what would you offer to that? Because you've been walking beside me and these wacky ideas now for nearly a decade. And you also have a lot to do with what we are creating in terms of the actual systems and the structure behind it. So tell more about that.
I think that there's so many models right now in our generation where we're realizing that the system that we've adopted doesn't work. It ran its course. It did a thing for a while, but it's not sustainable. There's so few things. If you just think to yourself, in 50 years, what about my life now will be true in 50 years? I think we would say a lot of things are probably going to be different. And I've always felt the tension with you where when you run a small business, you're playing in the game of sort of American capitalism if you're running a business in the US. And there's legal structures that define that. There's governance structures. There's tax structures. There's all these sort of boundaries to the game board. And I find you, Amanda, and so many of my other entrepreneur friends run into these boundaries and go, but I don't like that. I know I got to do that, but it feels wrong. Something's off. I can't put my finger on it. And so I couldn't even tell you the number of coffees, right? You and I have sat and debated these things over the years. And so it's always been sort of background music in my head. Where is the opportunity for wiggle room? Where do changes get made? About 10 years ago, I went through the process of becoming the first B Corp in the state of South Dakota, which is a extremely stringent superimposed governance structure and philosophy over the top of a for-profit. And so I was familiar with the most intense, robust thing that we have to offer right now. If you're, watching this in 2026, there's also a thing called A Corps that was sort of imagined in the last 12 months for artists. And generationally, we're kind of getting to a place where we're starting to ask about the legitimacy of our current models and are they sustainable? Will they be here? Are they heading the direction we want to head? And so we've been sort of in this soup, this sort of intellectual soup, emotional soup of this for a while. And I think from you and I just battling each other and battling on the same project for so long, we've landed with some pretty interesting concepts. We're sort of mashing together in a new model that it echoes, it rhymes with some existing structures out there, but it also does some new things. And so I'm someone who's very passionate about regenerative models at large, and so this was an opportunity to kind of put some of those concepts right into a business.
Yeah. I love that. And, I think about it. I don't even know if I heard the word regenerative probably in the last few years. I definitely think and there are other people now in our village, in our sphere, in our ecosystem who use that a lot. I mean, Matt, you use it a lot. We have a few others that are near and dear to us who speak to that often. Some people listening may not really even get what that means. So I think we can just do a quick well, what do we even mean when we say regenerative? But before we answer that question, I just want to chime in and say, I think part of those conversations that Clint and I were having over the past many years is, again, I've been supporting authors for the last 7+ years, bringing their books into the world. And I was rubbing up against the models that existed, the systems that existed, and recognizing that there was a tension point, a friction point for me as an artist, as a creative, as someone who said, not only do I want to put this into the world, I have to put this into the world. It is every part of my being, soul, heart is needing to express this. And as someone who at times felt limited, either, with resources specifically or other things happening, it was like, how do we do that? How do I do that? How can I then support others, whether they have a resource limitation or not? I mean, it's not just about that, because I think we'll talk more about that, I'm sure, in this next, hour. But that was one of the pain points that I've been really pushing up against, is there are so many individuals, some of them right here sitting at this table today, who have these big messages and don't necessarily know how to bring them into the world in a way that feels in alignment with our soul and our ideals and our values. And even just the practicality of the being resourced enough to do it, or in a way to do it, given the systems we currently live within and have to sort of play the game at. So I just want to sort of put that out there, and then also punt it back. Matt, when you hear regenerative, or when you use the word regenerative, what do you think of, or how would you describe it?
Okay, sure. The word itself, regenerative, starts with generation and then re. So it's resilient, it's adapting, it is homeostatic. And this can apply to an ecosystem or a business, right? These are all systems that are operating. And so a regenerative business would be one that supports all the different A regenerative business would be one that supports all of the different stakeholders for the ways that they put in, they get something back out. And ideally, it sustains everybody who is engaging.
I love it. And Clint, I mean, again, you're kind of you've been playing in these models for years now, and in so many different ways also, right? So bring some of that wisdom in, help our listeners understand, what do you mean by regenerative? What does that look like?
Just before this call, I was on a call with a group of people who were in a project where we're restoring a prairie, whatever that means, restoring a prairie these days. And
the life you live, the
Yeah.
life you live.
And we live in an era where the conditions with which the prairie existed prior to North America being settled by Europeans, they don't exist anymore. So we can't go back to that because those conditions aren't here anymore. So it was kind of a restoring to the future sort of thinking. But regenerative gets thrown on top of it, because if you are in the business of restoring land to a healthy place, you can do it in a way that it theatrically looks correct. Like you could, for instance, we could burn the prairie and buy lots of seed of biodiverse and plant it. And for 3 or 4 seasons, it looks like it's great. And then it all just dies and goes back to brome or whatever. That's not regenerative. It didn't sustain itself. It didn't move forward. It just had a huge infusion of difference, a huge amount of new energy, but that didn't have any capacity to move forward. So when we talk regenerative, we're saying, what can we do now that just keeps going? Like once we get it in motion, once we get it to a capacity where it reseeds itself, which is where we got this idea of the seeds in our thing, in the fruit, then it's increasing its capacity, it's maintaining its health on its own as it moves forward. Not as some sort of magic trick, but just more how ecosystems work when we don't interfere with them too much. And so we think in those terms, when work outside of this. It's just, is this something we're going to have to continually feed and it only exists because we're putting something on the an input all the time, or will the momentum of it carry it forward? And so that's kind of where my brain goes with regeneration is, does it have some motion forward, and can it sustain some of that on its own?
And what does this mean to creators? I mean, you talk about a prairie, which is amazing. And I can tell you, I have no idea what it actually means to restore a prairie. And I don't know how many of us get to actually have that experience. But like, what does that mean to us as artists, creatives, creators? Why are we even looking at nature, right, as the model for this?
Yeah, I mean, it might blow people's minds, but we are nature. And that's not something Americans definitely have Westerners. We kind of see humans and then nature. Any biologist would tell you that's one and the same concept. We're definitely nature. So it's a bit of returning to self in it. I think that, can you ask the question again? I got so distracted by how beautiful it was
Okay.
that people could see their own nature self.
Well, and this we can cut out. I'm so distracted that I am not using my headphones as my microphone, and I'm so afraid that there's echo. So I'm going to be muting
No,
myself
you sound
here.
perfectly clear.
You're not
I
hearing
say,
an
let's
echo.
leave it in, guys. This is what it looks
All
like
right.
when we record a podcast.
Yeah.
This is what we're doing at the table.
Mm-hmm.
Here I was so prepared to be on my headphones, and I'm like, nope, they're not working. They're not connected. Anyway, as long as there's no feedback. Yes, I will. So why does this matter from the perspective of a creative?
Oh, yeah.
Yes, we are nature, but why the regenerative model for creators?
I have so many beautiful, intelligent, high capacity humans in my life that effectively have to play the role of starving artist, where they, I could think of several in my world right now that I live close to even, who work really hard in one industry. Maybe they wait tables or they're a bartender or something, where they're really putting in the hours and making money. And then they hit pause on that, and then they go be a creator, and they hope that doesn't bankrupt them. They put a lot of money into a sculpture or a studio album or a mural, and there's always a lot of hope that that's going to return something other than the praise of just the art community, which does happen. But then more often than not, they just absorb that outlay, and then they go back into this production, and they kind of separate these worlds where it's work your tail off to make money. Hopefully you have enough money to do this, if there's the rare gift of a commission. And so, my curiosity was, does it have to be that way? Is it one of those roles that we just assume works that way, so we do it? Or is there something we could learn from nature because nature doesn't do that a lot. Our generation of humans does it all the time because we're 21st century capitalists, but it'd be hard to go into the forest or into history and find where we thought like that. And so, my curiosity was just what if we're wrong, or what if it was different, instead of just saying, well, that's just how it works. And so just trying to bring some of those other concepts forward to put pressure on it and say, could it operate different if we expected it to operate different?
Matt, what are your thoughts on this?
I love this question. So as someone who has authored a couple of books myself, I quickly ran into the same issues that Clint was speaking to earlier about entrepreneurs, where, okay, I wrote this book, I want to change the world. And then quickly the system of capitalism and American business closes on in. And I'm like, oh, this doesn't feel aligned with even the values of where this book is coming from for me. When we talk about extractive capitalism, my brain often goes towards natural resources, but in the book publishing industry, I think authors are the resource that are being extracted often, and they have a lot of creativity, and then the reward that comes back, like Clint was speaking to, is often not there to sustain them. So as a creative, I want an avenue for my work to come into the world that is aligned with my values. I don't want to be doing this by myself. Like the hyper individualistic business model of being like a coach or a solopreneur can be good, but I'm interested in being part of a village and writing my book in community, being supported by community, uplifting other authors and sharing resources. And so here we are inside the village, right? And a village is like the human version of an ecosystem. It's a community where we all work together. We're interdependent with each other. And so what if we adopted this model to be a community of people who are bringing messages out into the world, through publishing?
I love this. I guess it has me wondering, and again, I'm kind of envisioning who's listening and what they might be thinking, or even just the conversations and, questions I've had and received over the years so we talk about being in a village, I mean, the ecosystem of it and the regenerative parts of it and how we can do this together. In some ways it sounds a little theoretical, and not that I don't want this conversation to like break down into like the tactical actual like ways this happens, but just, I mean, I think to ground it a bit more, how does this actually translate, right? Like, how does this translate to those in our village, those who we hope, are currently serving, hope to continue to serve, right? Like, can we bring this down a little, like another layer into sort of like reality? What does that look like and feel like, or what are we aiming for?
Yeah, I think some of, I'm thinking about when you hear a new idea that feels like fantasy, it's often violating how you think how the world works already. I'm going to go back to a nature project and come back to answer your question, but I was researching how you pump water uphill without electricity. And it turns out there's a really simple mechanical thing called a pump jack that uses no electricity, no gas, and through the motion of the water, you can pump water uphill. And it sounds crazy until you see how simple it is. And then you go, oh, well, yeah, I mean, obviously that would work, right? So I think it takes a bit of an approach to some of this to say, for each of us, even those of us who were at the beginning of this, to say it's different than what I expected things to be and to work like, but it might actually, even if it feels like it's violating physics, it might actually work. I think that for us, the curiosity is, can there be a equitable system that people can bring their creativity to, and that people with different capacities could help move those projects and messages forward? And could there be some sort of backside communal sharing in the growth and expansion of those things, whether it's just through the message growing or by it producing finances or all the many outcomes a book can have, in a way that's not hierarchical, like some sort of corporate, or there's not really a team captain kind of structure, but also not fantasy woo-woo, right? We do live in an era where we hope that a book sells. We want our authors to make money. That's really great. But we also hope that it could benefit other folks. And so I think right now, of all the times in my life, which started in the 70s and come forward, so I got a few decades of spectrum. I just had a neighbor stop by and she said, I was just reading this article and it's saying that like, it might be wise for our generation to figure out how to move in with their neighbors, like be in the same, share a house and share finances so we're more resilient. Like, I think we're sort of at a place where the flavor change from this hyper-individualism, Lone Ranger mentality. Our parents were the Lone Ranger generation, and they're the last generation that's alive right now. That is aging out of the system. And those of us who've inherited it are saying, I don't see that this isn't, I can't feel the trajectory of this. I can't see in 100 years this working out real well with how we think about things. And so I think that this sort of shared effort, shared outcomes is pretty interesting. I get the opportunity to help manage and design and orchestrate a food forest, which is effectively a very large free community garden. There's tons and tons and tons and tons of fruit trees and berry bushes. And I think last year we had something like 10,000 people come and harvest fruit. And there's 3 of us on the team who manage it. And the 3 of us, the amount of fruits and vegetables we received from everybody coming and participating and bringing some and share was so much more than we could ever eat that we were giving back away some of the stuff we were given. It's not intuitive to plant a bunch of fruit trees that you give away for free that would fill your fridge, but to like a problem level, it does. It really does work. People are very eager to participate in this sort of community effort and community reward. And so I've got really simple elementary examples of where it's happening. And so, we're bringing that forward to a business model and saying, okay, let's circle back to this, something that's a lot more spreadsheety. Can we have a similar type thing where we collaborate on this? And it might take a while like a fruit tree does, but man alive, once it gets going, we might have more apples than we could ever even harvest, let alone eat.
Yeah. Matt, what's coming up for you as you hear this? And again, just feeling into
I
like
want Clint to take us through the business model. Tell us how it works.
Okay, great. Yeah. All right, Clint, let's do it.
Let's talk in simple terms. So I'm not familiar. I'm not sure how familiar those watching are with how businesses basically work.
Right.
But in general, a business basically tries to produce a product that the audience wants for less than they sell it for, so that there's a money to run the business and maybe make a profit. So if you buy something for $100, the person who made it is hoping that they made it for less than $100 and they get some money and you get the product. And now we really hope that everybody along the way made a what's called a living wage, or they were paid fairly for their stuff. None of us are super eager to have more children paid bowls of rice for us to have our iPhone or whatever the thing is, right? We're all much more aware of that. And so looking at how a traditional business works, where in this case, publishing, an author creates a work, and then there's a team that takes that work from basically a Word doc that could be messy, could have misspellings, could be structurally incorrect, maybe needs to be whittled down, and all the things that magically make it a book, from font choice and paper sizes and so many things, hours and hours and hours, it turns into a book. We hope that at the end of that, the book sells and makes money, and that the cost to produce it is covered. And so we've been trying to do that. Any publishing company's trying to do that. That's sort of the basics. The question is, could there be something that sort of straddles that gives it some safety and some health? Could we create conditions around that so it has a higher likelihood to survive and be sustainable? And so what we've done is sort of straddle a traditional model of, we make money and we pay out money to have the product made, and that's sort of business, to can the business act as another person, so to speak? Can we have funds that invest in the book itself, and as the book is successful, that it bears fruit? We use the terminology fruit. That the people who help produce the book share in that reward. The author certainly shares in that reward, but that the business itself replenishes some of the money back at the beginning and cycles back on itself. And just today, I was working in a building, fixing something, and that was not working as simple as a hot water tank. And I've never seen this before, but they double hot water tank system. We have a 2-fund system, so that's really caught my eye. They create a loop so that it keeps the water hot in a really efficient way. So not only is it getting cold water, but some of the hot water is going back in and making that warmer, so it puts in less effort, so it gets hot water faster. And I was like, this is literally exactly how our model works. It feeds back on itself a little bit. This might feel like a slight difference, and it might be from a sentence standpoint, but financially it's a big difference. But typically what happens is someone owns the business, and then if it does well, they keep the money. And so we're saying, okay, what if that's not our driving factor? What if our driving factor is more of the creative? How do we take that windfall for the owner and structurally make it so it bypasses the owner and goes right back into the system that supports more creatives? So we've got this sort of system that straddles a model that basically helps fund the process going through. And when it's successful, it sticks that money back in the beginning and it goes through again, hopefully so there's less effort the next time to accomplish the same goal. And I think that, we're headed in a really interesting way for that to transpire and sort of work like this little hot water tank I came across this morning.
I love that is a real life example that you saw today. And
it's exactly like our drawing too. I was like, whoa, when I walked in the room.
And we're at the beginning. I mean, this has been, years in kind of theoretical development and, I'm sure a lot of conversations. It's been months in the actual, getting it on the paper, kicking the tires, looking at how this works. And we're still early days. I mean, Matt, what would you offer? Because again, you kicked this conversation off to saying that you're just not seeing anyone doing something like this. And what about this excites you? What about this feels like, oh, thank goodness.
Sure. Yeah. So I'm going to take this from an author's perspective. I write a book. I think it's pretty good. I want to get it out there. I can write a bunch of cover letters to big publishing companies, never hear back from them. I can write a whole bunch more letters to book agents and try to find someone who maybe will listen to me, but probably never hear back from them. And then I go and I start looking and, okay, there's some vanity publishers out there. Basically, the way that works is I pay them, they make my book look pretty. It costs me a lot more money, but at the end of the day, I have a book. Or I do the self-publishing route. I figure out all these things by myself and, I get to keep all of the profits, but I'm doing a bunch of stuff that is taking me away from writing or whatever my core joy is. And then, I have to come up to speed on all of these other things. And having done this a couple of times, at the end of the day, the financial reward without a huge publishing push and all the other pieces to support me, you put a book out into the world and your 5 best friends are going to buy that book. And then what happens? right? So the options are kind of tough for authors out there. So if in looking through the options, I see this business that's saying, hey, we have a community here. We have regular writing circles so that you can get support if you have writing blocks or inspiration from other people who are walking the path or advice, give and receive. We're going to take your book. We're going to do our magic to it. And then at the end of the day, instead of like a traditional publisher, you get pennies on the dollar. Or instead of self-publishing where you had to figure this out all by yourself, we're going to put you into the system. You're going to get to keep half of whatever you sell right off of the top. That's amazing. And then in the system that you're a part of, you're going to receive benefits from all of the revenues we receive from all of the authors who have published the books in this system. And you all can go more into the details of how that works. But as an author, why that matters to me is when I'm in this system, I have a stake in the game for everybody else's success. I want to know who else is going through. I want to support their book. I want to uplift them because if they succeed, I succeed. And the same thing's going to happen when I publish my next book is I'm going to have, however many authors who are in this village saying, yeah, go, Matt, and let me help spread this to my network. And it's like, wow, that's amazing. So that's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah. And that's what's so exciting. And like I said, it's, we are at the leading edge of this being a real thing. And it's going to be so exciting to, a year from now, have another conversation. I mean, we'll be having these conversations monthly at least, or, periodically, but to be able to come back, in a year from now, even more than that, and just to celebrate how this is really working is going to be so exciting. So, those listening, follow along the journey. We are like heading out into the wild, wild west. And we are going to be discovering so many wonderful things, I think, along the trail. I kind of want to take a step back. I mean, we're sort of moving forward and like, this is where we're at. We started with the end, basically, right? We're like, here's where we are, guys. We found the solution, which is so exciting. Or we found a solution. I think we found something that feels more regulating to our nervous systems and more supportive and more aligned. But there's a question that's like before. And I think, Clint, you can certainly speak to this even in relation to just our conversations, but certainly anything else in your life. And then, Matt, you might even just reflect on this from your own personal experience. And you already talked about being an author kind of in the previous world. But the question is, what kind of questions were we asking, or what kind of problems were we trying to solve before we even had the language for regenerative model, or before we even landed on this? Because I think it is sort of interesting to see where we've come from, or what we've been maybe trying out or experimenting with, whether it was in actual, in the actual world or just mentally, philosophically, conceptually. Does that make sense, Clint, in terms of what I'm asking?
You mean as far as Awakened Village or as a society?
I'm going to let you take it either way.
Yeah.
You are welcome to answer that question however you want. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, if I'll back up prior to Awakened Village and to give context to why we would even think the way we do. But when Europeans came to the U.S. right at the time of the Age of Enlightenment, on the precipice of the Industrial Revolution and the Reformation, you get a coalescing of a lot of big, strong forces. And these capitalistic business models take off, and you end up getting Rockefellers and people that just do extraordinary things we'd never seen before. But some of the earliest people that came had a lot of guilt. Puritans, for instance, had a lot of guilt from making the money. So they created a nonprofit structure that they could put that money into to do good in the world. So you do something that is extractive, and then you sort of penance pay it into a nonprofit structure. And we're now, we're the great grandchildren of this thinking. And we've inherited these structures as if this is how the whole game works. You're going to make money or you're not going to make money. You're going to do good or you're not, right? Or you're going to be for the love of money or for the love of the world or whatever these things are. And that sort of dualistic thinking, and just structurally, we've inherited a system of thinking that presupposes a lot of stuff that we never question. And so we've been in the business of questioning those things for a long time. Just like, why are these unquestioned answers that we're just handed and we just say, well, that's just how it is? If you want to open a business, do you want to be a for-profit or not for-profit? Any questions? And you're like, that's my choice.
I mean, I hope I make money.
Yeah, I hope
and
I want to make money and
do good. This is a question. Can you do good and do well, right? We I love this tension
Yeah,
because that's
yeah.
been such a common thing for the love of money or
We
for the love of the world.
we love this sort of dualism in our society,
Mhm.
that it's got to be one or the other. It sort of structurally shows the thinking capacity of us at large. But there's a lot of folks who have more thinking capacity and bigger hearts and more curiosity who go, wait a second, I don't know if it's just black or white. And so when you operate a small business and you go to get resourced to grow and you start looking around, let's say Amanda's running a Wiccan Village and she's like, man, my business needs money. There's a very narrow set of circumstances with which that can come about. And you're handed those as an entrepreneur. They go, well, go to get a loan at the bank, find someone who's an investor. They give you 2 or 3 choices, and if not that, that's it. Yet there's tons of money floating around in the world, all sorts of sideways in every direction. And people get weird money from all sorts of interesting activities and paths you've never heard of, but you're sort of given just like these few choices. It feels to me like you're standing at like the Subway counter and you see everybody ordering all these interesting sandwiches, but no matter what you order, they keep just giving you a ham and cheese as the option. Do you want ham or cheese or ham and cheese? And you're like, but that person has lettuce. Like, no, 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 no. It's like that where you kind of get a sense that something's off or it doesn't work the way you think it works, or you're missing the right questions, or you got to be born into money. I don't know. You just have the sense that it's got to be different than what I'm experiencing. And so, in the nonprofit world is sort of the similar logic. And I think that when you start to decouple some of those concepts, an example I've been using often in my discussions over the last year with people about most concepts is we've all built these little Lego houses of how the world works. And then the last year we keep tripping and falling and dropping our Lego house and it shatters all over the floor. All the Lego pieces are still there, but we could put it together in a different shape. We don't have to build the house back tall and skinny. It could be short and wide, or it could be round, or it could look like a shoe or a ball. Like, we don't have to build a little A-frame house each time just because we feel like we're supposed to. So I feel like we're generationally at this place where we go, man, does it really have to work that way? Right? You, Amanda, are asking, like, investors, is that the only way to fund a business? Taking out a loan, is that the only way to fund this? But it's a training thing. Not only do we have to think different, but folks who want to come in from the outside, let's say someone does want to participate financially, they also have to believe it can work different. It kind of takes each party, it takes a Matt to show up to something and say, I think different too. Man, you guys think different and I think different. I bet the way I think different could inform the way you think different, that sort of thing. Yeah. And so I think it was just a really willingness on really being brave on your part, probably battling yourself more than you battled me. And then my experience of some of this stuff to say, the rules don't have to work exactly how we think about them. We don't have to play it exactly the way. We can still be legal and follow the rules, but we don't have to imagine it only getting funded or only being successful under certain circumstances. And I think we've really needed that breath of fresh air and freedom because you, Amanda, run into so many amazing creative people all over the world who come with these crazy, amazing works. And you're just gripped with this tension of like, Clint, you don't understand. This message has got to get out there, but they don't have enough money to make it happen all at once, or the funding's kind of funny, and the whole thing is held up because of funding. I mean, that's your biggest beef I've heard from you over the years. Like, that's this right. Whole thing is like bottlenecked at this one discussion. Yeah. So we've sort of played like kindergartners and said, can we just talk about that one thing and how creative can we be about making that work differently?
And then I love the analogy of we pick up our Legos and we say, let's build this house in a different way. And I think that's the exciting point. And I think that's where we are collectively, right? I think a lot of us are having these conversations, at least it feels like it. I don't know. It would be really fun if we're even at the front edge of that. I don't think we're at the leading edge, but I know that there's, more and more of these conversations happening. Matt, and this kind of leads into us having these conversations right now, right? It is sort of like we do get to build the house a different way. And I don't know, like what would you hope like the listeners out there are, I want to sort of now we've gone down, but I want to take it back up again, like philosophically, right? Like, why does this all matter? And why now? You know what I mean? Why are we having these conversations right now? What's your take on that? Because I don't know, I feel like you're kind of tapped in and connected to a lot of these bigger ideas as well.
People who show up for Awaken Village are creating culture. And it's one of the things that we actually need. We don't even know that we need, but we need. Where mass media is really good at remixing culture or appropriating culture, but the actual creation of culture happens with the people who are showing up at Amanda's doorstep saying, I have this thing and I want to bring it out into the world. And it's challenging to make the space, the headspace, or the time to find real gems that are actually going to enrich the way that you think and change your mind or change your life. It's challenging to find those. So we have our own challenge in society today to bring out these voices which are transformational. And if we don't do this, our society will get stale and will collapse. And to a certain extent, like, that's not hard to imagine that that's happening right now. So from a bigger picture, like, what we are doing here is continuing to enrich and continuing to create the pathways for the evolution of our society and our culture. I think that's a big picture frame.
I would agree. I love that. Clint, did you have anything to add to that? And Matt, did you say more? Was there more? I just want to make sure we didn't cut you off.
Nope.
Okay, good. Yeah. Clint, is there anything you'd say to that? I sort of have like a final question, but I'm saving it just to see if there's any more juice we want to squeeze out of this lemon.
I keep coming back to, I'm going to offer an additional concept for those who might be interested. That's
Wait, one more concept?
I know, I got plenty of them, but they're all the same. All these concepts I'm offering are just from a different field to show that we're in the era of transition. But I get to advise on something called community land trusts all over. And so it's one of those concepts that you're like, why was this not where we started? Like, why did we do it this other way? So like, I might get contacted by a neighborhood association, and the neighborhood association says, we're trying to fight CVS buying these 10 houses and knocking them down and putting up a CVS, or pick any sort of big company. But I'm using that because it's all over America, right? Or a gas station or something like that. And these people have lots of money, and they come in and they bulldoze historic homes, and they do this sort of thing. It happens all everywhere. A community land trust is where the neighbors buy the land that could be used for this sort of thing. So the neighbors collectively pool their money and they buy this, and they say, okay, we do need a store here. We would like to walk to a grocery store, but we own the land. So we're going to decide what kind of business is going to go there. And you're going to rent the land from us. So as you enrich yourselves, you're building wealth in the community too. You're not just coming and extracting all of our dollars. There's an epidemic nationwide of companies going into rural communities, a Dollar General, Dollar Tree kind of situation, and just extracting the last few morsels of dollars out of these communities and then leaving when it's done. Like, we can't keep doing that. Like, that era is so passe, and we now sort of all see it. But a community land trust is literally a different way of thinking and playing with the same rules. You're just swapping the actors around. Now the community's the investors instead of the community being the victims. So you get this role reversal, and they get to decide what they want in their neighborhood because they own the land collectively, and they collectively benefit, and it builds wealth. I love that we're in an era where old things like land ownership and business and all these are the same Lego pieces. Nobody introduced a new Lego piece here. They just connected them differently. And so I think that like Matt was saying with the culture change, I think that's where you get these sort of systemic feelings of culture change and actual culture change by people who are, reconfiguring how these things connect and interact with one another so that there's different outcomes. We're all aware of the outcomes we're seeing, and we all can have a list of outcomes we don't want. And so you got to have different things before that, different ingredients for different outcomes. And so you, Amanda, have wanted different outcomes for your authors. You meet these people and you're like, I want to offer you an outcome that is in alignment with how you think the world works. I don't want you to have to sell your soul to something and just mask in the hopes that in the end it comes back around and you feel good about yourself. You felt so incongruent playing up against that for so many years. And so what we're trying to do is say, okay, like the Lego pieces, I think let's just take these two apart. We're going to stick them together this way and see if this is more in alignment with our folks. So I'm really excited about that.
Me too. And I would just say, before I ask our final question, or my final question, is there anything else that either one of you wanted to, make sure you got to mention or address, or something that came up that we haven't circled back to? Is there anything? You were holding your pen, Clint, and I thought,
I was taking notes.
You and
Matt were saying such good things. I wrote down.
I know. So I want to make sure that, you didn't have a note.
I'm coping with my excitement by holding a pen.
I love it.
I hope that someone watching this feels seen. I hope that the unspoken truth that's in your heart, that it shouldn't work this way. It doesn't have to work this way, but you don't know who to tell, or you don't have the language for it, or you don't want to be ridiculed or questioned. That from so many different concepts, not just the concept of business and money, but so many other concepts, from spirituality to wellness and all the different factors of life. Like, Awakened Village is a really great spot to bring that energy and say, hey, this might sound a bit wacky, but, or I've been working on this concept. Amanda, you have such a gift for, use the term doula, but really assisting people in the figuring out of those unspoken things and getting it out where they can look at it and go, that's it. That paragraph has been in my heart for 10 years and it's been stuck. And I know that's what turns you on so much. And that's where you are so jazzed that we need to find ways to move these things forward. So I hope that someone listening contacts you and is like, you guys were saying words that feel like the kind of space I want to enter into. And they can see if they want to participate as an author or assist in the village or something along those lines.
Yeah. And, it's funny. So how many times someone's come to me and be like, now, like, don't think I'm crazy. And I just want to be like, lay it on me. I promise you, I have heard something way wackier. I mean, that's just the world I live in, and I love it so much. And there's no competition with like wild, wacky, crazy, amazing ideas. This also just felt like a really beautiful segue into my, kind of closing us out, because, Clint, you mentioned that this isn't just about books. I mean, it is. Like, we're a publishing company. Awaken Village Press is a publishing company. Many of us here are authors. We're going to be talking to other authors and things like that. So that's definitely one of the things we focus on. And I think it is beyond that. Like, this is just one conversation. We're not always going to be talking about business and money and regenerative models. We'll definitely be like making sure we circle back to it, because it is really exciting. I think the progress of that is going to be really exciting to witness and watch it unfold, and how it's going, and where are the challenges and where are the wins. And there's just there is like philosophical conversations to be having, conversations around sexuality and spirituality and awakening and the becoming process. And I mean, prairies and water. I mean, it's just, we're going to cover the gamut. And so as we sort of close out today, and Matt, if you wanted to sort of chime in, like, I'm curious, like, the invitation to those listening, like, why would you want to keep listening to us? What are we hoping to offer or bring to your, ear holes or, living room or wherever you're listening to us? Now, what would you say?
Yeah, I will piggyback on what Clint offered, which is we're doing something new here. And most of the authors that I know, the people who are writing books, are writing about something new. They're also on the program of bringing something new into the world. And so there can be at least an energetic alignment fit here. If you're looking to be with some folks who are kicking the tires or trying out new Lego designs or thinking outside of the box, like, that's what's happening here. And we're creating community around these conversations. And so that can be incredibly supportive for people who have their own vision or idea that they're hoping to bring into the world to shift the way that things work. Like, if you're around other people who are doing something similar, then we'll all uplift each other.
Absolutely. Clint, any final
Yeah,
thoughts on
I mean,
that?
this, reminds me a lot of like design charrettes and other fields where people are expected to be creative and they're received wholeheartedly for that divergent thinking and that creativity. Those sort of sideways solutions are really praised. And, Amanda, I've known you a decade, and you've had literally a daily eagerness to support these folks for 10 years. You've never wavered in one conversation that I'm aware of to say, no, I was wrong. This doesn't matter. And you're quite the opposite. And, yeah, I think that today's topic is businessy because we're kind of giving a context to the way that we think. But we are in the age of systems crumbling, systems being rebuilt and reimagined in every direction, whether that's how we spend money, or how do we get married, or should we be driving cars, or pick anything, pick any direction. We could probably talk quite a long time about it. So if you got a topic that matters to you too, let us know. But I think you'll see an eagerness amongst the three of us to tiptoe or sprint into some of those topics where we spend some time thinking.
Yeah, I love it. And yeah, I love the invitation too. If there is a topic or a question that you have, we would love to discuss it. And I think I just can't wait to see where these conversations go. Like I said, we've been having conversations privately now for many months, and I'm excited to be bringing those out in a more public way so others get to benefit from them and, learn alongside us, be inspired, like Clint said, feel seen, not feel maybe so alone in this deconstruction, reconstruction that we are all going through. And yeah, I'm excited for what's going to come next. So Clint, Matt, thank you for being at the table with me today. Thank you all for listening and joining us. And we will be, rolling these out regularly so you can be joining in on these conversations. Appreciate everybody. Thank you so much for listening.
Thank you.
Take care.